Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. James Davies, welcome to the conversation today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks, John.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Maryland. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about change generally, but more specifically, how do you evolve your leadership style when your team, the culture around you, the market itself is changing, and it creates disruption, it creates volatility. And how do you navigate that? Because there's lots of leadership theories out there, a lot of leadership frameworks, and they tend to kind of all work within different contextual specifications, right? Like a certain time and place, you could lead in one way, and another time and a place, that same way would not be effective. And so,
Right.
Part of just being a good leader is having enough emotional intelligence, enough awareness of your people, your context, that you can be agile, that you can adapt when you find change happening around you. So this is what we're going to try to unpack and explore together today. As we get started, I wanted to share James's bio with everybody. James Davies is the Chief Executive Officer of Kinetic Data, a Minneapolis-based software company focused on empowering organizations to deliver unified digital experiences across complex technological ecosystems. With over a decade at Kinetic, James has helped evolve the company from its workflows roots into a leader in digital experience platforms serving both enterprise and government sectors. Before assuming the CEO role, James served in multiple operational leadership capacities, shaping the company's growth, strategy, culture, and partner ecosystem. I could go into a whole lot more detail, and I put even a more thorough bio in the show notes. But James, anything you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
No, I mean, I think you hit it. In general, I'm a first-time CEO, and I think that's probably helpful for the audience to understand. Like you mentioned, I've been with the company a little over a decade. Started out as one of the junior style roles, and over time was able to participate in different departments within the organization, and then as the COO for about 4 or 5 years, and then the founder took a step back and asked me to be the CEO. So it's been a journey for me. I'm happy to share some of those experiences.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. It's always fun to hear when folks are able to have those experiences of entering and experiencing different parts of the
Mhm.
business and moving on up. It seems like that story is becoming less and less common.
Yeah.
Like people tend to shift around so much. Like finding someone who's even at a company for 10 years now seems to be kind of the anomaly. And it used to be like in my parents' generation, like it was much more common. You would almost spend
Right.
your whole career at one place. And that of course is very much changed. So
Yeah.
anyways, that's super cool. And I'd love for you to weave in, insights that you may have around just your own career development and growth into a CEO role, because I think that would be valuable to the audience. Along that vein, perhaps to start off this conversation before we get into change, change is all around us. It's inevitable. It's something we're going to have to deal with. But that said, are there any leadership principles, tried and true, that you have found, just aren't compromisable? Like you're going to
Mhm.
stick to these core principles, and even when everything is swirling around you and everything is complicated and everything is high pressure, that you're gonna stick to those principles, even if the style might shift a bit.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the answer is yes. I mean, I don't compromise on trust. Trust is like kind of the key one for me. And that not just earning trust, but also protecting it. And there's many times high stakes situations that you'll get into, and it's tempting to take shortcuts or maybe hide information or sugarcoat something. But I find that erodes trust, and I think if you lose trust, you lose everything. It reminds me of one of my hobbies is carpentry.
Mm.
And in carpentry, like if you don't have a square foundation, everything else, every cut that you make after that is going to be compromised. And I think of trust the same way in leadership. It's a reference point for most things that you do. So that's an area that I don't compromise on.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good area to not compromise on, because like you said, it really is it really is the foundation. And I do think, most leaders would probably agree with it. Most people
Mhm.
would say, yeah, trust is foundational. It's really important. But I've also found that when the rubber meets the road in really difficult, high pressure situations, it's one of the first things that often goes out the door, right?
Yeah.
Um, for a variety of reasons, and sometimes the intentions may even be good, like you're trying to protect people, whatever. But in this day and age where information is so free flowing,
Yeah.
and people's feedback on employee and customer experience is so free flowing,
Yeah.
like you just can't afford to do things that will erode that trust, to withhold necessary information, to give bad information or false information, like all those things that may even be rooted in some sense of like protection or other positive sort of outlook.
Right.
It still erodes trust, and so you have to really be all in on that, I think, as a leader. Relationships are built on trust, and business is built on relationships.
Yeah.
And even in a world of like disruptive AI, we still need humans and we still need people interacting with each other, collaborating, and that only happens as you have trust. And so, if we're going to be able to respond rapidly to the change around us and continue to add value, create and innovate and bring value to the market, we can only do that built upon the foundation of trust. And yeah, I think just leaders either intentionally, but often probably not intentionally, just inadvertently, they just erode their own foundation.
Yeah,
Um,
it's both. I see it as, both internally for employees, they need to trust you because you're inevitably gonna need a pivot or change direction, but especially on for customers too. There's been situations where customers ready to move forward, but we don't think we're the best fit. So we're a software company, by the way, and
yeah,
so it's easy to kind of pigeonhole ourselves into an opportunity optimistically. And there's been times where I've had to say, you know what, like we would love to do this, but there's a better tool out there for you. And with that, if I didn't make that go that direction, then they would have bought our tool and found out there was a better tool and then left us and then gave us a bad review. So it's like, what's the point? So I've had to learn that, unfortunately, sometimes the hard way, but that's certainly, a core principle that I try to lead by.
yeah, yeah, awesome. So trust is a foundational piece. Anything else that you would put up there kind of at that level?
Well, for me, it's like servant leadership is kind of
Mhm.
is a big deal, and I have a unique perspective given I've been with the company for a long time and I've been in many seats. But we're a smaller company. We're just about 30 employees. We do big projects with big customers, but we still need to be scrappy at times. And so as I'm leading different people in the organization, I lead with a lot of empathy because I've been in their shoes before and I know the constraints that they're working within and some of the challenges there. So that's not really I guess it's a core principle for me to lead with empathy, and make sure that the people that I work with or work for me feel supported and like I understand their perspective and the environment that they're working within.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I strongly believe in servant leadership as a foundation, for, even when you end up choosing different styles for different contexts, built upon a foundation of servant leadership, which in my mind is really my job. If I have a servant leadership mindset, it means it's not about me. My job is about building the capacity of those around me and
Right.
helping them to be the best they can possibly be. And lo and behold, when I do that, that also helps me look good because they do better stuff and then I look good as a leader.
Sure.
But it's not about me. Like it's really
Right.
about helping and supporting everyone, and helping them to tap into their full potential and be their best self. And that,
Yep.
again, that only happens with trust. That also only happens as we have empathy and understanding, and we're constantly seeking that understanding and not just assuming we know, what they're dealing with or what they're going through. And people can tell the difference, like it's so dramatically obvious to
Right.
most people, when someone is giving lip service towards care and empathy and support versus you actually really do care and you actually really do want to help them. And people are willing to be pretty forgiving of leaders. We all are human and we all make missteps and
Yep.
and put our foot in our mouth or say or do dumb things. People can be pretty forgiving and patient when they know it's coming from a place of genuine care and concern. And yeah, we're human. We're gonna make mistakes, but we're also gonna own those mistakes, and then we're gonna help people around us respond and pivot as best as possible. It makes a huge difference. And when that's not present, it erodes trust, it erodes shared sense of meaning and purpose, and it just really it hinders the opportunity for growth. When instead of like this support culture, it becomes this like hyper competitive, zero sum game, fixed pie culture. Like we want growth mindset. We want
Right.
experimentation mindset. We want people, like you said, whether you're a relatively small organization or a huge conglomerate, you still need people to be scrappy. You need people to be willing to like go out on a limb and to try things. And you're just not going to do any of those things if you don't feel like your leader has your back.
Yeah, I think transparency is a big piece of this too. If as a leader you're transparent and with, I'll say just the situation that you're in, and don't try to sugarcoat things, people you'll wind up having a bunch of employees that'll run through a wall for you, because they trust you, B, they have the context because you're being transparent, and then at the end of the day they know that you actually have been in that seat before, so you know what they're dealing with. And
Mhm.
so those, I guess, maybe to answer your original question, it's trust, empathy, and then transparency are like really the core principles that I lead by.
Yeah, well, I think that's awesome. So with those as your foundation, then you find yourself in the day-to-day grind. You find yourself with all these different pressures. Often there's fires you have to, put out. It's very easy for even the best intentioned, seasoned leader to end up in a situation where they're just running around like chickens with their head cut off, all day, every day, because there's just so much stuff happening around them and they're trying to be responsive. How do you maintain like a confident calm amidst all the change? Recognizing still, yes, there's going to be fires to be put out. There's, all that stuff needs to happen, but a leader's job is to be strategic and to focus on culture and to focus on all some of these other pieces that you simply can't do if you're just running around like a crazy
Right.
maniac all day. So like how do you couch your approach within shifting contexts? In some, I call it a confident calm or an ability to almost be unflappable in the face of challenge. Well, whilst not putting your head in the sand, because
Sure.
I have seen some leaders who seem super calm and they're not like running around like crazy, but they also are fairly oblivious, and they ignore all the stuff that's happening instead of being strategic, proactive, or even responsive to what's happening. That's not good. That's not healthy, and that's not going to lead your organization in a good direction. So I definitely am not advocating for anyone to put their head in the sand and pretend like everything's fine when it's not. But recognizing the challenge, recognizing the change that's occurring, but staying calm and then being able to adapt. Like how do you navigate that?
I think a lot of folks in my position or just in leadership positions in general won't share issues, like we talked about transparency earlier, but the issues and the context behind those issues with others, they take them all on themselves. And so, again, if you have this foundation that we discussed earlier in place, then you'll have a leadership team that believes in those things as well. What I do is I basically, I'll have our leadership team get together and I'll say, guys, here's the stuff I really don't have the answers for, and I'll put it out there and I say, we need to solve this as a team. What ideas do you have? And we create a safe environment where people can say, like, hey, they'll raise their hand and say, well, have we tried this? Or they can push back and challenge the direction I think we should go down. And that's what, so basically, I think it's just having a team around you where you don't feel like you're on an island. And there's certainly times that you've got to keep things close to chest, and that's difficult to do. But by having a team, then you can delegate, and you have a force multiplier out there in your leadership team to actually solve problems. So that's kind of how I balance it. Is I just bring it before my team, and we talk openly about what the challenge might be, and I get it out of my head so that I've got a couple of people working on it, not just myself. And again, since they know that I have the context because I've been in the trenches before, they support me in helping to overcome whatever that challenge is, and then I'm not on an island by myself. So yeah, I lean on my SLT a lot.
Yeah. I've been part of teams, even executive teams, where I've seen that in action, where I've seen that kind of level of openness, transparency, collaboration. And then I've been on the exact opposite, and again, maybe it comes from a place of care and concern and like
Mhm.
protection. But when the leader takes it all on themselves and they're not willing to like loop other people in and have them be part of the conversation and part of the problem solving, it's really like the difference in my mind from my experience is so dramatic. Like the difference of experience I have as an employee, as a
Yeah,
leader, because in one situation I am engaged, I'm involved, I'm participating, I can contribute in meaningful ways. In the other, I feel sidelined. I feel neutered. Like I feel like I have no, even though I have all this, I can contribute. I feel like I'm not even in a position to provide any value or contribute in a meaningful way. And it's really frustrating
yeah,
to be in that situation, especially when you're aware of problems. Like you
yeah,
know that there's stuff that needs to be resolved and you're not looped in, you're not included. It's super, super frustrating, demoralizing even for folks. And so I think if a leader, for anyone in the audience, if you have ever been in that situation where you found yourself doing that, I'm going to assume it's happened because you're trying to protect people, because you care about them and you're not trying to burden them. I'm going to give you the best case kind of interpretation of it. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because people are still going to feel like
right.
even if they give you the benefit of the doubt, people are still going to feel like you don't trust them, like you don't want to involve them, that that you're not willing to let go of some control. And that's a hard place to be in. Good leaders aren't like good executives, good leaders aren't going to stay in that environment. They're going to
Yeah.
go somewhere else.
It's
And
funny. We just went through our 360 reviews and some of our, I'm able to see with the feedback that employees gave. And there's one or two, I'll say managers or directors within the company that they really try to protect or shield their team from work that they know that they don't want to do. And
yeah,
it's almost comical to see their team sees them doing that. And in their feedback, they're like, you need to trust us with this stuff. Like I think one of the traps we can get into as leaders is thinking that employees don't care about the why behind how a decision was made because it's not in their scope of work. It turns out like if you just share and give people context and into whatever the challenge is or the decision that was made and the why behind it, even if it's unrelated to them, they actually do care, and then they're
yeah,
they're they're even more willing to help you solve that problem and overcome it. So, I used to try to shield things from the team to say like, I'll say take one for the team and maybe take care of this task that I knew no one wanted to do, and it wound up making the team feel like I didn't trust them with it, which was the opposite of what I was intending to do. So, yeah, getting out there and saying like, hey, here's what's on the plate, here's what we got to do, here's the why behind whatever it is that we need to do or why this decision was made. Again, people will run through walls for you and make it happen. So,
yeah. And that's a great, I appreciate you sharing that personal example experience because yeah, I really do think that most leaders are trying to do what they think is best. Like I don't think many wake up in the morning thinking, how am I going to hide things from my people today
right.
and cut them out of key conversations
Yeah,
and
it's not malicious.
like yeah, like I mean, at times are there people who are malicious? Sure, but like most of the time, it's not malicious.
Right.
There's probably good intention behind it, or just perhaps a slight negligence behind it.
Mhm.
Like so many times when it comes to conversations around trust and transparency, leaders who are in it all the time, they think they're being transparent. They think they're communicating. They think
Right.
that they're maintaining trust. But you talk to line level or even middle managers about the same thing, and they're like, it's radio silence. I'm not hearing anything from anybody. Why aren't they including me? And it's because I think sometimes leaders fall into the trap of like they're in meetings all day every day talking about all this stuff and they just assume it's kind of front of mind for everybody and they forget that you have to like actually over communicate. You have to like repeatedly again and again
Yep.
repeat and reiterate and frame up what's going on and over communicate. And if you don't, I would say it's not malicious, but it's a bit of a negligence around,
Right.
being able to maintain that trust. And it is something that's correctable. Like people will be forgiving if you can like make some adjustments and then try to be more open and transparent. And
Yeah.
again, it's not that you're not necessarily trying to be transparent, but most everyone that I come across could be more communicative. Like
Right.
you can
It
almost
was
always communicate more in a way that's going to be beneficial.
it was one of the biggest lessons I learned when I assumed this position about, a year and change ago. I kind of had an all company meeting. I set the direction. Here's where we're going to go. Here's where, we were shifting a couple of things around. And I figured that's the last time I had to say it. And now everyone's got that context and then they can go. But like I learned, you've got to repeat it over and over again. It's like I've got little kids. And if I tell them not to cross, look both ways before you cross the road once, like I can't expect them to do it. You got to say it over and over and over again. And people usually actually don't get tired of it because I think that folks, process things at different intervals. And so he might hear something once and then based on whatever they just came from,
Yeah.
they interpret it one way. So you've got to be consistent with that. And it's very easy to overlook as a leader, like saying something once and thinking everyone's got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has just been an awesome conversation. I note the time and I'm going to have to let you go here in a minute, but as we start to wrap things up, maybe you have an example or two, or maybe, just a kind of parting wisdom around like with these foundational core principles and components that we've been discussing, and recognizing that yes, we live in a volatile time, like disruptions all around us. Anything come to mind in terms of like how you've adapted your approach, your style amidst those changes?
Yeah, I think, we've already hit on this, but I think really making sure that people understand the why behind why a decision is being made is
Yeah.
important. And I know we just touched on that, but I can remember it was actually not at Kinetic Data, my current company, but a previous company. This is in how it relates to a system, basically the time tracking system that everyone had to use, a couple of thousand people in the company. They were
Hmm.
changing the time tracking system, and in the new time tracking system, you couldn't like copy and paste your time card from the previous week, and no one wanted to use it. There was no adoption of it. Managers were constantly like reminding people and whatnot. And it wasn't until a couple of weeks later that they said the reason why we had to change the time tracking system is because to win this really big contract that's going to benefit everyone in the company, we had to have a more compliant time tracking system. And like as soon as we knew that, all of the complaining stopped. Everyone got their time cards in because like they knew what was in it for them and they were able to like that back to transparency. They knew the why. And I think, organizations inevitably have to change. And I think bringing everyone within the organization along for that ride is really important, and giving them the context and stop thinking like, oh, they don't care about this, because if you don't do that, then it's just going to be this decision came from on high and no one wanted to collaborate on the decision. But if you actually give them the background, people will change.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. James, this has just been a really great conversation. Again, I need to let you go, let you go on, get on with your busy day. But as we wrap up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word for today.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. It's James Davies, and our company website is kineticdata.com. And again, we're a software company. We help organizations streamline their digital experiences, typically for large, complex organizations. So would love to connect with anyone.
Awesome.
Appreciate the
Thank you,
time, John.
James. Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what James can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe. They can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.